Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive, and this time we're going all the way back to the early church
Back to the beginning.
with Paul and his letter to Timothy.
Mm.
We're talking first century mentorship with some seriously timeless advice
Timeless.
for today. So we've got the whole book of First Timothy in front of us. What I love about Paul is he's so direct, straight to the point.
He is.
So we're going to get to the heart of this letter and really dig deep for those golden nuggets of wisdom that we can apply
Absolutely.
to our lives. You ready?
Let's dive in.
Let's go. So right off the bat, Paul jumps into this idea of guarding the truth. It's like,
Almost urgent, right?
it is. It's like in the first chapter, he's practically yelling about those
Yeah.
spreading myths and getting lost in pointless genealogies. It's like,
Almost 2,000 years ago.
I know.
And it sounds like he's describing our modern day battle with information overload and fake news.
It's like, whoa, how did he know?
Right. So it makes you wonder, what are the genealogies or distractions we get caught up in today? The endless scroll of social media, the pressure to keep up with the latest trends. It's a call to step back and ask ourselves, what truths are we clinging to?
It's like, what even is truth anymore?
Exactly.
Right. Like, okay, so we're guarding the truth, but what is that truth, right? Like, what are we supposed to be guarding? Well, Paul,
He gets into that beautifully in chapter 2.
he does when he unpacks God's redemptive plan.
Yeah.
And this one's powerful.
Yeah.
He says God wants all people to be saved, to come to know the truth.
Wow.
Now, that's a statement.
That's huge.
It's huge. That makes you rethink how you view the world,
Right.
how you interact with people who might be different from you.
It's a reminder that we're not called to judge or condemn, but to extend grace and understanding, just as God extends it to us.
Oh, it's good.
And, that leads right into one of the most practical ways we can live out this truth. Prayer. Paul specifically calls for prayer for all people, even those in authority.
Even those kings in authority who might drive us crazy. That feels
Especially relevant.
especially relevant today.
He links it directly to our ability to live peaceful and quiet lives. Think about the leaders in your own life, in your community, maybe even those whose views you disagree with. What would it look like to pray for their well-being, for wisdom in their decisions?
Man, that's convicting,
It is.
but good. All right, so we've talked about guarding the truth. We've talked about praying for people. But then Paul kind of shifts gears into leadership.
He does.
And this is where First Timothy gets pretty specific about the qualifications
Right.
for those in charge, especially elders and deacons.
Yeah.
It's like he gives us this.
He lays out this list of qualities that's like a spiritual job description.
Oh, I love that.
Above reproach,
Right.
temperate, sensible, hospitable, apt to teach.
It's like he's giving us an ancient performance review
Yeah.
template, but one that still holds up today.
Absolutely. Still relevant.
Imagine that job posting.
Uh-huh.
Wanted? Church elder. Must be a one-woman man,
Uh-huh.
not a lover of money.
References required from at least 2 angels.
This guy.
You've got to love Paul's directness.
Oh, he's so good. But okay, on a serious note, though, these qualities, they aren't just for pastors.
No, they're not.
Right.
Think about your own life, your workplace, your community. Are you embodying these values? It's a high bar, but a worthy one to strive for, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. A
Yeah.
worthy one. So we've got guarding the truth, we've got prayer, and now we've got this high calling
Yes.
of leadership. And this is just the beginning of First Timothy.
Buckle up.
There's so much more to unpack,
Yeah.
so stay tuned because we're going to keep diving deep into this incredible letter from Paul.
Okay, so we talked about guarding the truth and the kind of character we need to reflect it, but how do we actually live that truth?
That's the question, isn't it?
That's where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
And
Keep
Paul-
it practical.
Super practical in the second half of 1 Timothy.
Yeah, he doesn't pull any punches.
Nope.
He's like, bam.
Yeah, in chapter 4,
Chapter 4.
he drops this warning about future departures from the faith, and
It's kind of scary how
it's eerily relevant
relevant it
to
is.
what we're seeing today.
To today, yeah.
He talks about people distorting the truth about marriage, imposing unnecessary rules about food,
But it's like
legalism.
Yes. It's like he's describing the legalism we see
In some circles, yeah.
in some circles where the focus shifts from a genuine relationship with God to a checklist.
To a checklist of rules and regulations
Yeah.
and those distorted views on marriage. Paul was dealing with that back then, too.
I know.
It shows how these core truths are constantly under attack.
Constantly.
Even centuries later.
It makes you wonder, are we getting caught up in legalism
Right?
where we're more focused on the letter of the law
Than spirit of it.
than the spirit of it? Are we holding on to traditions or rules that are actually hindering our relationship with God and others?
Good questions, tough questions.
Tough questions.
But Paul doesn't leave us hanging.
Thank goodness.
He immediately follows this warning with some powerful advice for personal growth.
Okay, I like this.
It's like in chapter 4, verses 6 to 16, he gives Timothy this spiritual training regimen.
Oh, I love it.
This roadmap for becoming a more effective leader.
A spiritual training regimen. That is so good.
It's not just about knowing the right things.
Right.
It's about putting them into practice, training ourselves in godliness, just like an athlete trains for a marathon.
Yes, exactly.
And that training involves discipline in our study of the Word, in prayer, in cultivating those qualities of character we talked about earlier. It's a lifelong process of inner transformation that spills out into our actions, our relationships, our whole way of being in the world.
Wow, that's good.
And that outward expression of faith is something Paul emphasizes throughout 1 Timothy. He's really passionate about caring for those in need, especially widows. In chapter 5, he lays out this clear responsibility for the church to support the most vulnerable in their community.
It's a beautiful picture of what it means to live out the gospel.
It is a powerful reminder that faith isn't just about personal piety. It's about actively demonstrating love and compassion for those around us.
And it goes beyond just financial support.
It does.
Yeah.
Paul talks about honoring elders both in terms of respect and practical care, especially those who dedicate their lives to teaching and preaching.
He even pulls in those Old Testament references like, don't muzzle an ox while it's working.
I love that.
Connecting the dots between caring for our leaders and the principle of a worker deserving their wages.
He's weaving together this beautiful tapestry of scriptural principles to emphasize how taking care of each other is essential to a healthy community, whether it's a family, a church, or even a society as a whole.
That's good.
But he's not afraid to tackle the tough stuff either.
No, he's not.
He gives these very specific instructions on handling accusations against elders, emphasizing the need for fairness, for due process, for multiple witnesses before any action is taken.
It's like he's laying out a framework for conflict resolution.
Exactly.
It's based on truth, justice, and a desire for restoration, not just punishment.
Think about how we deal with conflict today, whether it's in our families, our workplaces, or even online. What can we learn from Paul's approach?
That is a great question.
It's a reminder that even in disagreements, we need to uphold truth and integrity, seeking a resolution that honors everyone involved.
So good. Now, chapter 6 is where things get a bit complex.
Yeah, a little bit.
As Paul addresses the issue of slavery.
Which was a reality of his time.
Which was a reality of his time.
Yeah. We need to approach this passage with sensitivity and an understanding of the historical context.
Absolutely.
Paul instructs those who are enslaved to treat their masters with respect, even if those masters are also believers.
It's definitely a challenging passage for us to grapple with today.
It is?
But it's important to remember that Paul isn't condoning slavery.
Right. He's speaking into a specific cultural context.
And urging believers to act with integrity and dignity, even within a deeply flawed system.
He's highlighting the power of the gospel to transform relationships, even in the most difficult circumstances. And it's a reminder that living out our faith isn't always easy or straightforward. There are complexities and nuances we need to navigate with humility and a willingness to learn from the past.
Yeah, for sure. Now, from slavery, Paul shifts gears to another weighty topic. Wealth.
Oh, yeah.
And he
doesn't hold back.
He does not hold back on the warnings. He's not against wealth itself.
Right.
But he's crystal clear that pursuing riches as our ultimate goal is a dangerous trap.
He uses some incredibly vivid language to describe the dangers, saying those who crave riches stumble into temptation and a trap, and many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction.
That's a lot of words.
I know, it's like a mouthful.
But it's so powerful.
It's a potent image, isn't it?
It is.
It makes you stop and examine your own priorities. What are we truly pursuing in life? Where do we place our hope and trust? Is it in fleeting wealth? Or in the God who richly provides us with all things for our enjoyment?
That is the million-dollar question.
Literally and figuratively.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
But thankfully, Paul doesn't just leave us with a warning.
Oh, he does.
He points us toward
the true riches.
Yes, the things that bring lasting fulfillment and joy.
In the closing verses of chapter 6, he urges us to pursue righteousness, godliness, faithfulness, love, endurance, and gentleness. He reminds us that we've made a good confession of faith before many witnesses and challenges us to live lives worthy of that confession.
It's a beautiful and powerful call to action.
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it? Like, we've covered so much ground in 1 Timothy.
No, right?
From guarding the truth
to living it out.
to navigating those tricky issues.
Leadership conflict, even wealth and possessions.
And I don't know about you, but
Yeah.
as we reach like the final stretch of this letter,
Hmm.
I'm struck by the sense of urgency
Yeah.
and weightiness in Paul's words.
It's like he knows his time is short and he's pouring everything he's got into Timothy,
Yeah.
entrusting him with this incredibly precious
Yeah,
thing.
like the gospel.
The gospel.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's passing the torch.
He is.
But it's not just a casual, like, hey, here you go,
Yeah.
He's urging Timothy
Guard it.
to guard it fiercely, to protect it from corruption and those who would twist its meaning.
It's like in those closing verses of chapter 6,
Yeah.
where he warns against those who engage in empty chatter,
Mm-hmm.
those who promote what he calls falsely named knowledge,
That's good.
right? It's a reminder that we're not just dealing with abstract ideas here.
No.
Like, we're talking about truth that has the power to transform lives,
Absolutely.
truth that's worth fighting for.
And sadly, Paul acknowledges that some have already strayed from the faith because of these distractions.
That's true.
It's a sobering reminder that the battle for truth is real
Mm,
and the stakes are high.
they are.
It makes you think about the empty chatter we encounter today, whether it's on social media, in the news, or even in our own conversations.
Right. Like, are we discerning truth from falsehood?
Are we holding fast to the core of our faith, or are we getting swept away by the latest trends and opinions?
Man, these are
Tough question.
tough but essential
Yeah.
ones to ask.
And this is where Paul's emphasis on discernment becomes so crucial. He's not saying we should avoid engaging with different ideas or perspectives,
Right.
but he's urging us to test everything we hear against the truth of God's word, to be so grounded in our faith that we're not easily swayed by every new wind of doctrine.
It's like developing those spiritual muscles.
Yeah, that ability to filter information through the lens of Scripture,
Mm-hmm.
to recognize when something aligns with the heart of God and when it's veering off course.
Yeah.
And in the midst of all these warnings and exhortations, Paul ends with a simple yet profound statement.
What's that?
Grace be with you all.
Oh, yeah,
It's like a breath of fresh air after a long journey.
it is.
A reminder that in the midst of all the challenges, the controversies, the need for vigilance and faithfulness, we're not alone. We have God's grace, his undeserved favor and empowering presence to sustain us, guide us, and strengthen us for the road ahead.
It's beautiful.
It's a beautiful reminder that even when we fall short, God's grace is always there to pick us up, dust us off, and set us back on the right path.
Man, Paul is so good. Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into 1 Timothy,
Yeah.
I'm left with a sense of
Challenge and inspiration.
challenge and inspiration.
Yeah.
We've been reminded of the importance of guarding the truth,
Yeah.
living it out and passing it on.
Mm.
We've explored the high standards of leadership, the need to care for the vulnerable,
Right.
the dangers of pursuing wealth as our ultimate goal.
Yeah.
But it's not just a list of rules or do's and don'ts.
Right.
It's a call to live lives
Of integrity.
of integrity,
Yeah.
purpose,
Yeah.
and deep commitment to the things that truly matter.
And that's what makes this ancient letter so incredibly relevant for us today. It's a guidebook for navigating the complexities of life and faith in the 21st century. It's a reminder that we're called to be people of truth, people of grace, people who reflect the heart of God in everything we do.
Absolutely. And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Another one down.
But the journey
Doesn't end here.
doesn't end here. It's time to take these truths and let them shape our lives.
Yes.
Our relationships, our interactions with the world. Go out there and live out the truth you've been entrusted with.
With grace and boldness.
With grace and boldness. And until next time, happy diving.